Yes, Chairman.
Representative
Thank you.
Johnson.
John, I appreciate your statement that this is a critical issue. You're not suggesting that this is not a situation that needs to be resolved because people are dying in hospitals currently, right?
I do not think that the stories that we know of are because of the law. I think it's because of confusion and the misinformation, even from reputable sources that we've been referring to.
And so the three stories, the three women, Portia, Imuzi, Gisele Barnica, and Navia Crane, nobody's suggesting that these women did not die in the course of a pregnancy complication on this panel, right?
I think the discussion is about what led to that confusion, especially in the case of Crane.
Okay.
I would say that those cases are exactly why the law is needed, because if even one mother dies because there is confusion among healthcare professionals and their attorneys, then we need to clarify so that there is no longer confusion. And that's why the law is needed.
Agreed. Thank you. We can all agree that this medical exception question is one that is real. It is not fictional. It is actually occurring, and it is something that's why the groups have come together to say we need to solve this particular issue. And so House Bill 44 is about medical exceptions. As y'all have said, this is not a choice bill, right? This is not effectively my side because I am pro-choice. This is not my side getting anything, right?
Correct.
And I want to talk about the other way. Would you equally agree that this is a medical exceptions bill and that this is not an attempt to backdoor the 1925 law?
So the debate on this bill is about how narrow or wide the definition of medical emergency should be in Texas pro-life laws.
Okay.
This is not a way to revive a law that, in our opinion, is already a live option. It's already a live bill, and whatever's going to be prosecuted under the 1925 law today is not going to be affected by this.
So tell me what could be prosecuted in your mind today in the 1925 law.
Well, I think there's. I shouldn't have said today. There is a court case ongoing, and so nothing is going to be brought until that case is decided. But that case does say it is illegal to furnish the means of an abortion for someone else, and so that is a little bit broader, and it's honestly untested when it comes to aiding and abetting. And so, buying illegal abortion pills and handing them to someone, does that mean I'm furnishing the means of an abortion? I think it would. And I think once that lawsuit is settled, that individual who is illegally trafficking abortion pills could be prosecuted under the 1925 bill. And that's happening. People, over 19,000 Texans are ordering abortion pills online right now. There's a story out of Houston of a husband who got these pills illegally and snuck them into his wife's water. That is a very real issue that I'm encouraging in other bills the legislature to address this session.
And so if the legislature wanted to specifically address or speak to that particular issue, the legislature could pass something right now saying that they are putting the 1925, all those provisions into effect.
Well, the state of Texas has already said 1925 law is in effect, and they're arguing that.
They're arguing that, but that is potentially an open question, correct?
A court is looking at that question right now.
But you personally believe that that law should be enforced right now?
Once the court case is settled, absolutely.
And so when you talk about furnishing the means, as you've said from that particular law, are you intending to go after the prosecution of women who have legal abortions in other states?
So Texas has, in all of our other pro-life laws, has a very explicit policy that they will not prosecute women who are seeking abortions. That's on the civil side, the criminal side, the administrative side. That's across the because that 1925 law was not passed in this political environment, in this political debate. There is no language in the 1925 law to protect women from being prosecuted under that.
Say that again, because I got confused.
There is no that same provision that we have in the Texas Heartbeat Act, we have in the Trigger Law, we have all over our pro-life policies in the last 30 years. That policy is not in the 1925 section, the law that we're talking about.
So if that 1925 law were to go into effect, there would be a conflict as to whether or not the woman should be prosecuted or not under the laws of the state of Texas.
I mean, there's a lot of case law since then that would be relevant, and I can provide those citations to you. I'm sure you know them very well, actually. But
I'm just asking, as a policy provision, you're not supporting this bill because you think it would create a provision by which you could go prosecute women?
No, that is not my purpose for supporting this bill.
Okay. And then for furnishing the means, I want to talk about where you draw that line, which is this law, because it is a medical exceptions bill and it is not a choice bill. So we're not talking about rape, we're not talking about incest, we're not talking about fetal abnormality. But you recognize that other states would allow the legal termination of, let's say, an 11-year-old little girl who's raped. Mm-hmm. Other states would say that there's an interest in that 11-year-old little girl being able to have her family help her make the decision on whether or not she wants to carry or be forced to birth her rapist baby.
Might have been confused that Texas doesn't have the ability to
Agreed.
determine policy for other states.
Correct. Texas has the ability to determine policy for our own citizens. Mm-hmm. You are taking the position that Texas is not allowing an 11-year-old child victim of rape to terminate her abortion, because we're not talking about rape, incest, or fetal abnormality in this bill, correct?
That debate is had every time a pro-life bill comes to the House floor. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that our state will continue to have that debate.
But that debate is not happening in other states, and there are other states that allow the lawful termination if the family determines that they do not want that 11-year-old to have to bear the child of a rapist. That's their decision. And other states
yes,
authorize
of course.
that decision,
There's a
right?
wide array of laws regarding abortion throughout the country right now.
And so it may be legal in other states.
Correct.
And when you talk about your analysis on not prosecuting the women, but you made it very clear that you would pursue the legal theory of prosecuting people who furnish, that would mean a grandmother who takes her 11-year-old granddaughter who's been raped across state lines to terminate the pregnancy of her rapist could be prosecuted under your theory if the 1925 law were to go back into effect.
The furnishing the means of an abortion has nothing to do with traveling outside of the state.
If that grandmother decides to remain in this state and pursue the option of prescriptive medication to keep her granddaughter from being forced by state law to bear the child of her rapist, you are saying you would prosecute that grandmother in the state of Texas.
I'm not quite sure if what you're talking about is something that would be legal or illegal, but what I am saying this law would apply to is illegally buying dangerous drugs, giving them to someone, which is currently, it's currently illegal in Texas. There's currently civil liability. If you are recommending that someone could be doing something illegal, I think yes. If they're breaking the law, then that 1925 law could be one instrument amongst many others that we have against the individual breaking Texas law at the danger of the mother and the child.
And you talked about aiding and abetting. Mm-hmm. Again, there are legal activities out of state that are criminal here. Mm-hmm. My nephews go to Lake Charles to gamble. I give them $500 to go gamble. You're not expecting the state of Texas to prosecute me for aiding and abetting and them engaging in legal conduct outside the state, are you?
That's not my policy area.
I understand, but I'm trying to be consistent in policy in the state of Texas and that we're not misapplying.
Yeah.
Right?
I think what is the jeopardy, what's being debated, sorry.
Yeah, and the point being, this is a debate that is raging, and I'm trying to get confirmation from you that this is not your intended purpose of this bill, because we are not trying to suggest that we are reauthorizing the 1925 law in total. We are simply saying that we are creating an exception to the threat of prosecution against the hospital community, correct?
Correct. This bill says nothing new that Texas has not already affirmed, that they think that law is valid.
And the problem is Ken Paxton is the one that dropped an entire footnote in his letter after Dobbs of the 1925 law in total against the hospital community in the state of Texas, correct?
I'm not advised.
So when the statement was, it's liberal media that's scaring people, and I don't mean it actually as a criticism. I really want to stay focused on this bill. But this is not a political thing for me. This is about saving women's lives and getting doctors back to practicing care. But when you say that the liberal media is giving misinformation on this, it was actually the Attorney General and his letter and statement that dropped the entire footnote of the 1925 law. And that's why I'm trying to say the threat is not coming from the media. The threat is coming from Paxton.
I don't. Our position is not that threats are coming from the liberal media. It's that they're misrepresenting the law, like the New England Journal of Medicine opinion
I don't care about
piece.
the New England Journal of Medicine. I care about the Attorney General, Ken Paxton.
Okay,
And I would love to ask him these questions, but the Attorney General's office also refuses to come testify before the committees of which they have authority. So the threat is real, and the threat is being done by a state agency, correct?
Not advised.
I mean, you can print this like I can, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, my focus is on
We've
this.
not been talking about threats. I think I'm a little confused as why you're talking about threats. We're saying
Because you made this statement after you testified in the Senate to the Chronicle, and I want to make sure it's very clear that the focus on this bill is a medical exception, and the focus on this bill is not to hijack it or backdoor it and do anything that could allow for the prosecution of grandparents taking care of their granddaughters or husbands taking care of their wives that have a fetal abnormality that need to go out of state for care or in this state for care.
If I may respond.
Sure.
So whenever I said the media misleading narratives or false narratives from the media, I wasn't referring to Ken Paxton's footnote there, but I was referring to the cases that you have mentioned with Portia and Nevaeh Crane and others who ProPublica has said they died specifically because of pro-life laws. Whenever those women were not treated properly, and we would argue it's medical malpractice, and that those doctors should be investigated or sued or held liable for what they did. And I have friends who have experienced miscarriages and pregnancy complications, and I think it is disgusting that our media would make women afraid to go receive medical treatment at those times. And so that's what I'm referring to as dangerous, misleading narratives from the media.
And I appreciate that point, because I also want to say what is painfully cautious to me is that this discussion of trying to fix the healthcare crisis does not become an additional concern that was brought up in the 1925 law to suggest that we should again scare people from getting care, or scare grandmothers or anybody else. And that's why I'm asking you guys, because that's the suggestion. You're not suggesting that this is anyhow a statement of reviving the 1925 law, because if the legislature wanted to do that, they could take the bill up and pass it themselves, right?
Yes, this is not trying to say any law is or is not already active. It's just trying to make sure that there's clarity for doctors and lawyers whenever they're treating women in medical emergencies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.